if it's one thing the Republican Party and conservatives hate, it's public education, especially federal government intrusion into that education. This is, of course, why the Republican Party is against Common Core standards passed by the Obama administration. Now, there are a lot of reasons not to like Common Core, but let's look at one Florida Representative, Charles Van Zant's reasons for fighting these educational standards.
Our new Secretary of Education in Florida recently appointed AIR to receive the $220 million contract for end-of-course exam testing and to prepare those tests. Please go on their website. Click the link to what they're doing with youth, and you will see what their agenda really is. They are promoting as hard as they can any youth that is interested in the LGBT agenda, and even name it 2-S, which they define as having two spirits. The Bible says a lot about being double-minded. These people that will now receive $220 million from the state of Florida, unless this is stopped, will promote double-mindedness in state education and attract every one of your children to become as homosexual as they possibly can.
I just want to mention that I did a little bit of research, just like he said. I went to the website and I looked around, and I didn't see anything about making your kids be as homosexual as possible. Now, maybe I missed an FAQ somewhere, but I'm pretty sure that's not one of the goals of education reform.
Yeah, I mean, what Sean was just alluding to, as homosexual as they can possibly be, this guy's he obviously seems to think there's some, like, grading system in terms of homosexuality-ness sort of thing. Like, you can be a level 1 gay, or you can be a level 3, or a level 5 gay, which is at the very top. And then, I mean, instantly when he starts...
Is there anything above level 5? Do you get, like, special gay powers when you get to level 5?
No, it's a DEF CON, like, homosexuality level 5. That's what it is.
Oh, that sucks.
In fact, yeah. And then he's thinking, oh, they're kind of, even if in Common Core, I mean, it seems to be, I mean, I'm trying to get some bit of logic out of this, illogical, but it seems to be that Common Core is somehow teaching about the LGBT community in some way. That seems to be, and he's against all of that. But why would you just be against teaching people just about someone else's other viewpoint or kind of stance on political policies? Yeah, I mean, I think that's what he's trying to argue for, and then he starts going about double-mindedness, and the Bible warns against it. It's just incoherent babble. He's just throwing out catchwords. I mean, Common Core's recently come under attack from a large number of different people and from various angles, and rightly so. Common Core's, it's got its problems, but you've got to have some standards in education, otherwise it would just be an absolute free-for-all. It would be nonsense, and we would be learning creationism in schools, which he's probably in favour of. It's just this, he's just throwing out kind of Common Core, LGBT, the Bible. He's just throwing out all these kind of red meat words to his base in the hope they go, oh, he's talking about the sort of things I care about, I'm going to vote for him next time. He's just moronic.
Yeah. And I want to go to some Common Core criticisms here, but let's let Sean go first.
Well, I might steal your thunder a little bit, because there are reasons to be against Common Core. Like, it's essentially very similar to No Child Left Behind, which everybody hates now. It's a lot about standardized tests, but there's no, like, hidden gay agenda in there. And the only thing I could think of that might be like a hidden gay agenda that he might have found, which I'm certain he didn't because it's the Obama administration, is like one of those math questions where it's like Susie has 2 apples. Susie's wife, Jessie, has 3 apples. Like that's like his little hint, just one of those questions, accepting same-sex couples. But no, like it's absolutely ridiculous. And to answer Jeff's question, there are levels of gayness, and I was once told that I could achieve level 147, but
you went Super Saiyan gay.
Yeah, but I never had Common Core, so I could never like achieve that. So I'm very disappointed. I
Oh,
just have to
okay,
live as a lame-o straight person.
Sean's gay levels are over 9,000. And I just before you go on, Jeff, I just want to pick up on what you're saying about kind of the sort of like gay questions that might be asked in the Common Core. I mean, if they had a question of like, Susan invites 30 people to a wedding, Mary invites 40 people to a wedding, how angry will God be? Like maybe I can understand that would have some sort of agenda, but yeah, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. But okay, so stepping a little bit away from some of the nonsense, there are actual criticisms of Common Core, and I think there is definitely some room for debate about this. And some of these valid criticisms come from a group like fairtest.org, and they, of course, argue some really excellent points against Common Core by saying that there's too much testing. All that testing will crowd out other subjects, even recess, and that sort of deprives children of a well-rounded curriculum. That, to me, makes sense. Another point of contention, they say that the tests are not actually useful to the teachers, parents, or students because they don't access important areas of learning, questions and answers are secret, and scores are not returned in a timely manner. Also, a fair criticism. And another one is parents, teachers, and students object to spending millions of dollars to testing and on computer infrastructure for online testing, while, of course, schools suffer from reduced funding, increased class sizes, cuts to arts, sports, and other activities. So, you know, these criticisms are very valid. And even Louis C.K. has come out against Common Core for sort of the same sorts of reasons. You know, I'm not a fan of standardized testing. I don't think we learn a whole lot from rote memorization. And that's what these standards and things like No Child Left Behind and Common Core have in common, is that they have this reliance on learning, teaching the test. And I don't think that's how you learn to think or critically or learn how to problem solve. You can find valid criticism in any sort of policy. But instead of doing that, people like Van Zant and the right wing come up with these crazy off-the-wall conspiracy theories. It's making your kids gay, it's going to kill your grandma, or anything like that, instead of actually talking about the merits, strengths, and weaknesses of any of these policies. And not just Common Core, it's all sorts of different legislation. You know, we do the same thing. They're doing the same thing with the healthcare law, with Obamacare. It's going to kill your grandma. It's going to bankrupt the country. The United States of America is going to implode, or God is going to, you know, crush the United States if we have like affordable health care. It's insanity. And that's the problem that you have in these debates, is that you have these crazy people peddling crazy shit when it comes to any of these government programs, and they try to stop them instead of actually trying to argue from a rational standpoint and offer actual solutions and use their facts to actually win the fucking argument. And that's really fucking sad. And the thing that's even more sad is that this guy he's in a position of power. He's not the screaming loony fringe party or whatever. He's in the Republican Party. This is a main national party with a lot of power and a lot of people behind them and a lot of money. And you have just this crazy conspiracy theories coming out of this party. It just drowns out the conversation, and it prevents any sort of movement on any issue.
Yeah, you're fundamentally right there, and I think also this shows one of the main differences between those on the left wing and those on the right wing. Certainly within the last kind of 5 or 6 years since Obama's been in office, is that when there's a problem with a certain policy or system in place, the Republicans will just come out and say, get rid of it, completely get rid of it. It's got a couple of problems, so we've got to absolutely wipe it from the books. Whereas those on the left wing will say, okay, there's some problems. Let's change it. Let's try and make it better. Let's build on the good bits and get rid of the bad bits. And
let's work together to try and fix the damn thing to make it work better.
It's like same as Common Core, and like you said with the healthcare bill. Democrats have said, yeah, it's some problems, but it's going to be doing good things. But the Republicans, no, get rid of it completely. And the same as Common Core. There are some good things. You've got to have some sort of like standards of teaching and some way to track a kid's progress, and that will involve some tests. But the criticisms that you raise and Louis C.K. Louis C.K. raised, they're valid criticisms, and you've got to try and change the way that the current system is. And people like Van Zant, they don't want to hear any rational argument at all because their brain can't cope with it.
But people like Van Zant, they don't argue on the facts. And it's so hilarious because there are so many problems here in America with some of our governmental systems. There are so many different problems that are in need of solutions, and solutions can come from the other side, but solutions don't. Instead, you get crazy bullshit that does nothing to help the conversation. It does absolutely nothing to bring any sort of thing forward. It's just, it will kill your grandma, it'll make your kids gay, as if having your kids gay is even a bad thing at all. But it's that argument that they continue to bring up. It's just these crazy bullshit arguments.
The final thing that I want to add is I agree with Stephen. You need some kind of test to measure people, to measure the students to see how they're progressing. I'm not like one of those, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, like those crazy liberals, in my opinion, that are totally anti-testing. But you won't need a test to evaluate the students, but you don't want the entire grade or the entire school year to become test prep. Like, I would like to live in a system where there are differences between the states, and then whatever model succeeds the best, the other states copy. Like, I think that's one of the advantages of having 50 states. But I do agree with some level of testing. You can't, like, it's too much test prep. Like, it's like the politicians are like, we're going to test the kids, but we're also going to pay you so that you do this exact prep so that they could pass, so we could look good and see look how good we did when we made your kids basically test takers instead of educated them.
Right. And Finland got rid of pretty much all of their standardized testing. I think they still have like one left for their final grade, right? Some sort of a test that they have to take to actually graduate from school. But, maybe we should look at how well they're doing over there and see if some of their radical ideas work for them, and maybe, I don't know, do a test here. I don't care if it's a state that decides to test it or not. We should see we're in a unique position that we can look all around the world and see what works and see what doesn't work and say, hey, look, we should try that. That looks interesting. It seems to work over there pretty well. Let's try it over here.
Right.
And that's what's good about America.
And we don't want to incentivize teachers to cheat, because that ruins the entire system. So we don't want to do that.
And that's one of the major problems with standardized testing. You're absolutely right. It does incentivize teachers to cheat, to make sure that, and it incentivizes schools as well to do the same thing, to get to show the highest scores so that they continue to get their funding. And tying funding to test scores, fucked up. So the schools that are failing are going to fail even harder, and the schools that do well, that are already wealthy, are still going to continue to get the full amount and continue to succeed. And what does that happen? That sets up, like, the schools that are well funded already are usually in the wealthier areas. And so you've got these inner city schools that are, crumbling. They don't have enough infrastructure and everything like that. They're already at a disadvantage at the start, and then they have bad test scores. That gets even worse. So these people don't get ahead. They're shafted in three different ways, and it's the reliance on the standardized tests for funding. It's wrong.
I mean, you could also make. My final point is that they're also shafted in a fourth way, in that when you want the smartest people to be teaching your kids in schools, there's no question about it. You don't want kind of Joe the plumber teaching your kids in school. You want someone, with at minimum a graduate degree. And the problem is, a lot of people, I know certainly in the UK, they won't necessarily want to go into teaching because, well, one, they're not making as much money, and two, I know many people who are doing master's degrees, or myself as a PhD. I don't want to go and teach like 14-year-olds or 17-year-olds because you have to stick to that core syllabus, to that core curriculum. Whereas if I get to teach at a university, I can teach pretty much what I like. And so you're not getting the best and brightest going into teaching into schools because they know they're going to be kind of stuck teaching to these common core standards and just stuck not being able to teach and educate kids in the way that they do know best rather than politicians coming up with these ideas of standards.
And finally, and I know we're going a little long, finally, every kid learns differently, or at least there's groups of kids that learn differently. I was terrible in my K through 12. I was always a good test taker, but I was terrible in my K through 12, and I didn't excel until I got to college because I learned differently. I learned in a less rigidly structured environment like your K through 12 elementary schools. So having one test and making classes all into this very similar test prep isn't going to benefit kids when they're different. They learn different, and no amount of Adderall is going to fix that.